The ChaChaPoya. The story of these people is mystifying and bemusing, to say the least. They hail from what is now modern day northern Peru / the northwestern province of the Amazonas. To be precise, the eastern slopes of the Andes. This part of the mountain range is known as the Cordillera de los Andes. However, this term can also be used to reference the entire Andes as well. To the north and west flowed the Maranon River. To the south and the east flowed the Hulaga River. Both rivers served as boundaries. Side note, this mountain range holds the title for the longest continental mountain range on Earth. To put this colossal length into perspective, these mountains are a bit longer than the length of Antarctica. So let's continue. This area is referenced as the Amazonian Andes. Reason being is it's enveloped by tropical rainforest. Many secrets may still lie in these mystic mountains. Nobody knows the exact origins of the ChaChaPoya. For now, there's only speculations. One of the reasons is because there are no known written records of these people. Or in other words, nobody knows if these people had a written language. These mountains also have a unique and rich biodiversity, notably llamas, alpacas, vicunas, guanacos, otherwise zoologically known as camelids. Yes, they are related to camels and could be bred with camels. It's very intriguing given the contents of my previous video that I posted, where I briefly touch on the possibility of Egyptians traversing the Atlantic and arriving in North America. Anyhow, I'll briskly go over some other biodiversity. The fauna is a wide array of animals that include mammals like spectacled bears, pumas, ocolots, onosias, Andean foxes, and various rodents. This forest and mountain range also hosts birds, amphibians, and reptiles. Now, the flora, it has trees, shrubs, flowering plants, crops. Some of the shrubs are the Andean oaks and trees, Colombian thorny bamboo, Spanish cedar, and various other species adapted to the region's altitudes and climates. There's flowering plants, there's crops like potatoes and quinoa, which is really popular today. There's jade plant, Amazon lilies, Piper anuncum, and more. There's been some estimates given of only 5% of ChaChaPoya sites that have been excavated. This number was given by BBC back in 2013, and it's still reiterated in 2025. The etymology behind their name is apparently not well known. Perhaps ChaChaPoya is a derivative of the words cloud forest. Another possibility is the land of strongmen. Cloud people is also used to reference and has been used to reference these people up until today. They are believed to have been egalitarian, which shocks me. And they anteceded the Inca by over 600 years. Now, their lifestyle, their way of life shocks me because today our conventional education puts an idea of democracy being the only way of life that factors in equality and fairness. It's not the full picture or representative of how successful other forms of, say, government or civilization actually are or were. So 800 is supposedly when the ChaChaPoya flourished. Ironically, prior to Spanish arrival and conquest, the ChaChaPoyas were conquered by the Inca. Specifically, they were conquered by the 10th Sapa Inca ruler, Tupac Inca and forgive me if I mispronounce this, Yupanqui, around the year 1475. Because of the harsh conditions they endured during their years of subjugation, many of the ChaChaPoyas opted to side with the Spanish, which was it was a common occurrence throughout the Americas during the time of colonialism. It must be added Native Americans not only sided with Spaniards, but also other Europeans that came later on, such as the French, the British, etc. When they were conquered and defeated by the Incas in 1470, 1471, they were transplanted around the Incan Empire. Side note, in more modern times, there is a deceased but still revered multi-platinum / diamond selling rapper known globally as Tupac Shakur, whom his mother named him after a Peruvian revolutionary, Tupac Amaru II. Moving forward, they, like many Native Americans, suffered from attrition, disease, and other atrocities. Unfortunately, as a result of Spanish arrival, their population over a 200-year period dwindled by over 90%. They could have built, though likely found, then inhabited, fantastic, bewildering structures. One being the fortress of Kuelap. Unfortunately, nobody knows who built this so-called fortress. Hundreds of burial sites have been found, which indicated a possible cemetery. But also, burials were found within the site's walls. They too, like the Aztecs, Olmecs, and Mayans, included geometric motif patterns of jaguar serpents in their building and art / stonework. And, like the Egyptians, practiced mummification. They used coffins. They also used what is known as pseudo sarcophagus. And they had an obsession with death, like the Egyptians, and practiced ancestor worship. This site also served as they say it served as a granary depot. Peru has an ancient necropolis in Viracochas as well, like the Egyptians. I have not come across much evidence of them practicing human sacrifice, but this disgusting practice is maybe an inescapable element of Native American life. In which case, it's a realistic assumption to say they likely did practice human sacrifice.
The ChaChaPoyans practice ancestor worship, so even though these funerary chambers and caves looked inaccessible to us, they were actually visited regularly. I suspect a few of the burials must have been sacrificial offerings. This drawing on inspection seems to be of someone holding a head, while blood spurts from the headless corpse to the right.
Some sarcophagi or sarcophagus is found in the citadel of Karajia, which was said to be a socioeconomic and religious complex, where ancestor remains were prevalent throughout the site. Another site is Gran Pajaten, which contains 26 circular stone structures, with some structures having 2 stories, and they're built on top of terraces. It too has stairways. It is said to be a granary depot. So again, we got another one. Another site is called Los Pinchudos. It is said to be a ChaChaPoya burial complex. It's isolated in Rio Abaseo National Park in Peru's North Andean cloud forests. The ChaChaPoyas, like the Sinagua and Pueblo slash Anasazi of the southwestern U.S., also built cliff dwellings. Such structures are the Ravache main site, which is said to be a funeral site. What is really puzzling about these people is how they were described. Fair-skinned or white, according to both the Spanish and the Incas. There is even a Chachapoyan mummy that was carved with a pointy nose and includes painted blue eyes. Spanish conquistador and chronicler Pedro Cieza de Leon observed / mentioned them as being unusually fair-skinned and famously beautiful. Here's an account of chronicled by Pedro himself. They are the whitest and most handsome of all people that I have seen in the Indies, and their wives were so beautiful that because of their gentleness, many of them deserve to be the Incas' wives, and to also be taken to the Sun Temple. The women and their husbands are always dressed in woolen clothes, and in their heads they wear their yautos, which are a sign they wear to be known everywhere. Yautos in Spanish means headbands, and I do believe that the Incas wore these. Supposedly, there was another Spanish man / author, and his name was Pedro Pizarro, who was quoted as describing indigenous Peruvians, some of them at least, as white. Although, where I read this, which was Wikipedia itself claims that Pedro was not quoted directly. The problem is Spanish chronicles aren't taken serious because of inconsistencies amongst the writers. There is a valid point on treating such accounts with skepticism. Yet again, though, we're confronted with another anomalous artifact, which depicts a person with a pointy nose and blue eyes. I mean, you really got to ask yourself, how did these fair-skinned people, or white people essentially, wind up in South America? And where did they get the practice of mummification from? Egypt? It's if you use a conventional model of history where it tells you that Europeans only came, right, in the 1400s, and they do say that Vikings came a bit before the Spanish. But I mean, if you use that, you still can't answer questions like this. And so I may have to file a complaint against the Smithsonian or any and every other academic organization / place of business that continues to peddle historical accounts that are obfuscations. The befogged mind is slowly being demystified, which is a triumph. And to me, it's a great delight. But OCDA must be utilized because it is a credible company that handles real complaints. This requires the outstanding expertise of Agent Ratliff due to his unbiased nature prior to making a determining factor of who he wants to issue any fines to or let go. As soon as he writes things down, they become true, which is his unique and liberating superpower at the stroke of a pen. It's one of his quality that makes him a national heroine. That is all. The ChaChaPoyas are speculated as being linked to the Celts and Gauls, as well as other European cultures, though these claims should be taken with a grain of salt because we just don't know. Francisco Pizarro was stated to have inquired about these fair-skinned peoples by asking the Incas. The Incas' response was that they were descendants of the Viracochas, whom were believed to be a race of divine white men with beards. A problem with a belief like this is that it perpetuates a fabricated sense of reality that somehow only white people could have civilized the world. It's a slippery and dangerous slope to go down. 200 mummies were discovered in high cliffs nearby a remote lake some 50 miles away from Kuelap. They were sealed in anthropomorphic sarcophagi. Some of these mummies have unusual cranial features resembling a conehead. Luckily, because they practice mummification, geneticists can study the genetic makeup to conclude officially whether or not they were what we consider today to be white people. The problem is that they have been testing the DNA of said mummies, but so far the professionals haven't published anything conclusive. In other words, they have made no determination on whether or not these people were white. Instead, the research factually states ChaChaPoya were genetically distinct from other populations in the Andean region. And scientists do not know what to compare them to, which makes some sense or could indicate that they weren't from Europe. I speculate they could have came from Persia. Reason being, there is or was a lady named Monica Matamua, a New Zealander who claimed her people came from ancient Persia or northern India, aka Bharat or Hindustan. The reason that I said there was a lady is I'm not sure if she's still alive. Last I read, she was 85 years old back in 2017. I could be wrong about that too, but I covered this in a video I accidentally deleted off YouTube. So to simplify my research, I'll summarize it. There supposedly was a war amongst or against the darker skinned races in either Bharat or Persia. Subsequently, Monica's ancestors had to flee. They traveled by boat and remarkably wound up making pit stops in Mexico and Central America, but ended up settling in South America. Then from there, they sailed to the South Pacific islands. One such island likely was Easter Island. And the reason I mention that is one of the sites have these sarcophagus or sarcophagi that resemble the stonework done on Easter Island. The site was in Karajia, and I'll pull up some pictures so that you guys could see how similar this stonework is to the stonework of the Easter Islands. From there, they permanently settled down in what is now known as New Zealand. The phenotype of the Waidaha is similar to Europeans, which includes pointy noses, green or blue eye color, blonde or red hair, and fair or white skin. Monica and her claims are profound, and there is substantial and credible evidence to support her claims. One similarity with the accounts of the white-skinned Waidaha to the ChaChaPoya are the documentations of them during colonial times by Europeans. Captain Wallace on the HMS Dolphin in 1767 stated that 10% of New Zealand islanders were white with blonde or reddish hair. Of course, there's been other documented accounts as well. But for the sake of making an extensive story short, I'll keep it light. More and more evidence will continue to reveal itself. Human history, in and of itself, is a conundrum. In some cases, vexing. But Jesus said, and I quote, "Ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be open to you." We are all in a position where we can uncover our history without some dogma or some negative connotations tied into it. An open mind. Essentially, the good, the bad, the ugly, we shouldn't hide from it or avoid it. Human nature is flawed, but it also has its beautiful side. What the official stories have propagated about history wasn't the full picture. The future understanding of the ancient world, in this case, the migratory paths, only continues to improve, especially now that the Western empires are falling.